All right, so we officially just hit record, which means that we have a recorded presentation on natural wellness today. And we are going to be talking about homeopathics and environmental toxins. And really, I want to leave you with a lot of hope today. So any of the things we talk about today, if they are challenging your belief system or they are health topics that maybe you've never heard before, I just hope and pray that you receive the information in a way where you're really going to learn something. There may be people that pop on to the chat and join us a little late throughout the call today. So welcome to Rochelle. I see Rochelle just popped on. So we're so glad you're here. We are going to dive right into the presentation, and then we'll pause for an icebreaker. And then we'll go back to the presentation and we'll save the very end for Q&A. Okay, so that's going to kind of be the flow of today. I am going to share my screen with you all. So let me do that first. And I'm going to jump into the presentation. It always takes me a minute here to share my screen. Thank you for bearing with me here. Share screen. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so thumbs up if you guys can see my screen.
Yeah.
Great. It should say Parent Naturally, the History of Natural Medicine, How to Use Homeopathics, and Alternative Ways to Address Health Concerns. So that is fully loaded, and that is what we are going to be talking about today. So, disclaimer, throughout this presentation and after, I encourage you to seek out facts. Get curious about everything. Some of the information that I share with you this evening might be difficult for you to hear. It might challenge what you've always known to be true, and that is okay. We only know what we know until we know more, and we can only act from a place of our current knowledge. So just know that everything you've gathered in your lifetime of learning about medicine and wellness and holistic health, we have this whole toolbox, right? And today you're going to learn some new tools to put in your toolbox and maybe some new things that you've never heard before. So just a little disclaimer. And where we learn about things that are a little more challenging and difficult to hear, just know that we're going to talk about the other side of that too, the hope in all of that. So thank you all for just making sure that you're muted throughout the presentation, and then we'll come off mute for the interactive part. Okay. So, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are members of one another. I liked that Ephesians 4:25, because we're going to be talking a lot about what is true today. What is the truth of medicine? What is the truth of plants? What is the truth in what we've heard up to this point in our lives? So plant medicine and homeopathy are traditional medicine and the original form of medicine. And I wanted to bring up this point because when I was at school and I was in class and the professor said plant medicine and homeopathy are the traditional medicine, it got me thinking, because I think we live in a world that often our go-to is to think of Western medicine or pharmaceuticals as the traditional original medicine. And that's not true. God made the plants and God made the earth, and everything that is healing to the body came from a plant. And so no matter what we've done with that plant, it's still true to this day that the traditional form of medicine came from plants. So over 3,500 years ago, bark from willow, we call it willow bark, was used as pain relief, as an anti-inflammatory by Sumerians and Egyptians and all over the world. And in later years, that willow bark was used for childbirth in ancient Greece and to cure fevers. And so if you think about what we use for pain relief today, we use aspirin or Tylenol. And those remedies are actually made, those medicines are actually made from white willow bark. And what's happened is we've extracted that white willow bark and added additives to it. We've added things to it when we don't need to. And so it's getting back to the simple place of what medicine was meant to be. Madagascar periwinkle, hawthorn, foxglove, star anise, and wild Mexican, I can't say my notes, wild Mexican yam have contributed to medical breakthroughs, including childhood cancer and medicines. So I just threw up a couple plants to give you guys kind of a little teaser. Actually, hawthorn stands out to me, and you can remember hawthorn is good for heart because of the two H's. So we're going to be talking about different plants and different medicines today, in addition to environmental toxins and things in this world that are doing us harm, and then ways we can beneficially help our health. So another Bible verse, fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they will bear fruit because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing. So why did I choose already this early in the presentation to share Bible verses with you? Because the Bible dates back so long ago. The Bible is an ancient scripture, an ancient book, and everything we're talking about today is rooted in ancient medicine. And so I just kind of wanted to make that correlation that from the beginning of time, God provided for us. He provided all of these healing modalities, and we can empower each other to have these remedies at our fingertips. So it's funny to me, it's curious to me. I don't know if funny is the right word, but I've had so many people in my practice, and I'll back up because I forgot to mention, for those of you that are new to Sunny Side Up Wellness, I am in a 4-year program to become a naturopath doctor. And so everything that I'm sharing with you today is a part of my journey, and it's to empower you. In no way, shape, or form is this medical advice. So I just want to make sure I preface that. And I find it interesting how many people say to me, well, natural medicine is too expensive. Homeopathy is too expensive. Going to see a traditional doctor, it's too expensive. Insurance doesn't cover it. What about senior citizens? I get all these questions, and they're such phenomenal questions. And so I wanted to throw up this slide to show you that in the US, we have the most expensive healthcare in the world. The United States, this was in 2021, was on average spending $12,000 on healthcare per capita expenditure. And I'm not sure if that's per family or per person. I would venture to guess it's per person. And then the other image shows you healthcare costs in the US have increased drastically over the past several decades. So this goes to show you percentage of GDP from 1962. Healthcare costs in the United States were about 5%, and then they're up in 2022 to over 20% of our spending. So something's broken, right? We're not getting better in our healthcare system. We're spending more. And of course, we're bombarded with things in this world that cause our healthcare to decline, like our food system and our food sources and stress and technology. But I bring up these slides because I want you to start to think about, as we talk today, shift your thinking to how natural health can be affordable and is affordable outside of our insurance system. So just start to think about those things, and maybe you want to jot down some questions or some things will come up for you. So we're going to do an icebreaker, and the purpose of the icebreaker is because I want us to start to think about, as we move through environmental toxins, as we move through the topics today, what plants out there or what medicines out there can benefit our mental health and our physical health when we hear things that challenge our belief systems, or when we hear things that maybe are stressful or cause anxiety. And so I threw 3 up here. Trumpet vine flower essence is good for projecting the truth. So if you take a trumpet vine, and there's a picture, I'm going to move myself over here. There's a picture, this red flower is a trumpet vine. And if you were to extract a piece of that red trumpet vine and put it into some water and leave it in the sun for 6 hours, you would be creating what's called the flower essence, and you're getting the frequency of the plant. And it's good, you can then drink it, and it helps you project the truth. So if there's something that is challenging for you to stand up for or speak on, trumpet vine can be a really great flower essence for you. Chamomile, you've probably heard of chamomile tea or tincture or even essential oil, calms the nervous system. And so these cute little flowers down here on the right that you can see growing wild or in your herb garden, chamomile is really wonderful for the nervous system. I personally drink chamomile tea, but you can also extract a part of the chamomile plant to make a tincture or essential oil, which you squish down the flowers of the plant and extract the oil from. So each of these have different processes to extract the benefit. Yarrow is one of my absolute favorites. Yarrow is a plant that grows in the wild and it's very medicinal. It has wonderful benefits for wound healing, but it's also really good for boundaries and protecting the aura. So it's really neat to think about how these plants have physical benefits, but then also how they have emotional benefits. So for an icebreaker, if you would like, you absolutely do not have to, but if you want to come off of mute and share with us some of your favorite herbs, medicinal herbs, and even share why, I'll just open it up and you can bring yourself off mute and share with us. I'll just give everybody a minute to think, and if nobody has one, then we'll just move on. No biggie.
You know what, Allie? I'm sharing that I don't have a ton of knowledge in medicinal herbs. Outside of, and I don't know if it counts, but that like cilantro is really great for detoxifying your body. That's probably like the one thing that I know. But I've always been really interested in learning more about flower essences and whatnot. And it's kind of been like on the back of my mind, and I just haven't taken the time to actually learn more.
Absolutely, cilantro counts. It's a plant that grows in the wild, right? Absolutely. I love that. And it's one that we can grow in our herb garden. And actually, this chat is not on specifically herbology. I do have an upcoming plant herb walk where you can learn about the medicinal benefits of all plants, but I thought it would be very important and interesting to just really kind of throw out a few and talk about why plants are so cool and important. So thank you for that, Rochelle. Cilantro absolutely counts. All right, anybody else?
I have a couple at least in the cupboard that I have used, but I'm trying to think of the names of them. I can go grab that if you want.
I mean, you can if you want. No big deal. That's okay. But you bring up a really good point that everyday herbs we have in our cupboard are beneficial, right? What do you use them for? Cooking?
No, they were liquids that I had bought in the past for health,
Okay,
So, but I'm drawing a blank and I've got at least a couple up there.
great.
Anyway.
Yeah, no worries. I think that's a really good point, though, that we more than likely, every single person listening to this has something in their herb cupboard that they use for cooking or take medicinally, take as medicine. Personally, and I know you do the same, Dad. This is my dad, by the way. Garlic every day, garlic extract. And
yeah.
bulb, the garlic bulb plant is very antimicrobial, antibacterial. It keeps away the yuck. So even something as simple as a garlic plant is so good for us.
If I don't know, I take curcumin. I don't. That's a root plant, but I don't know if you'd call it an herb. But I take some of those type things. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Just harvested all of my garlic, Rochelle says. Good job, girlfriend. One of my other moms is on the call as well, and we've been harvesting herbs. And I just recently did field herbology in school, and we tasted, it tastes like black licorice. And it was so yummy. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's like anise. Gosh, I'm blanking on the name, but I'm sure we all have something in the herb garden that is yummy and medicinal. Yeah. So anybody else want to share before I move on?
Was it anise that you used?
Oh,
Yeah, it was
I'm
similar.
sorry, I was muted. It's red fennel.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, it was red fennel. Yeah,
Black
red fennel.
licorice.
Yes, it was red fennel. And red fennel is for digestion. So that it was yummy. It just tasted so yummy. So thank you, Colette.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, sister.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other herbs you want to share while you're off mute, Colette, before I move on?
Well, I'm just excited to learn more because we have some choice herbs that we're growing this year that we've never had an opportunity to grow before. So
Oh.
it's just exciting to be able to learn from you and all the things that you're learning because we are in real time growing and producing things that can affect our bodies. And now we know more about what we can do with the herbs and the plants that we grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's the hope is that we can grow our own food, right? So again, today is not going to be on herbology, but we will be talking about herbology during my field herb walk, which is coming up July 2nd. And then I'll also be doing more on herbology in the future. So today we're just kind of dipping our toe into it and talking about how cool plants are. And I'm just really excited to hear that all of you on this call are already growing and thinking about your own herbs in your cupboard because they are very healing. So thank you for that. All right, so we're going to move on and I will remute you guys and then continue to jot down your questions as they come up and we will just continue to move on. Okay, so the not so fun part of this presentation. So, you know, when you ask somebody, do you want the good news or the bad news? Well, we started with the good news, and the good news was the herb. The bad news is we have toxins in our world, and the toxins in our world are diesel gas, gasoline, BPA, plastics, lead, mercury, chemicals, and things like cigarettes, exhaust, pollution, ammonia, pesticides, flame retardants, things we spray our furniture with, things that our clothes are made of. Even our dry cleaning has toxins, aluminum, parabens, food pesticides. So we talk about herbs and we talk about foraging, you know, going out and gathering dandelions or burdock root. But what if it's been sprayed? What if it's been sprayed with pesticides and then we're ingesting those pesticides? That's not good. So we're going to talk today about what to do about that. Tin poisoning, fluoride. For those of you on this call that have never heard to stop taking fluoride, now is a good time to do that because it's not the right type of fluoride that our body recognizes as beneficial. So we want to use fluoride-free toothpaste, fluoride-free products, and that will be one step in the right direction of eliminating toxins in our bodies. Environmental toxins continued. Chemicals, pesticides like Roundup, arsenic, lead, mercury, also known as thermocell. So if you've never heard that before, mercury is also thermocell. Benzene, cadmium, benzopyrene, vinyl chloride, formaldehyde, and then PFAs, which we can find in plastics. Asbestos, mold. Mold is very, very toxic and very pervasive. Once it takes root, that's it. Phthalates, which are used in plastic, skincare products. Think about, oh my goodness, how many skincare products and perfumes we put on our bodies. Right now, this very second, or right after this call, go unplug those Febreze plugins. They are bad for our lungs, they are bad for our bodies, and you are much better off diffusing essential oils, natural oils that come from plants. All of these things have been linked to cancer, developmental and reproductivity toxicity, and endocrine disruption. So when we talk about our hormones being unbalanced, this is from all of these toxins that are pervasive coming at us from all directions. Unfortunately, a lot of these toxins are also found in vaccines. So we're going to start there. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, some of the information you're going to hear today is going to make your eyes get a little bit wider and you're going to say, wow, I've never heard that. And that is okay. Take this information and do your own research. Anything I say or anything another instructor says to you or educator, always question it. Always get curious because that is how we learn. So the toxins that are found in vaccines, I'm going to turn in my book here and read to you some things that are in vaccinations. And I think it's important that you know, if you are vaccinated or you choose to be vaccinated, you should always know what's going in your body. So this information was taken from the vaccine guide, Making an Informed Choice. And I have my workbook here. If you guys want a copy of this page, I will send it to you. What's in vaccination? Ammonium sulfate, an inorganic salt that contains 21% nitrogen, has commercial uses such as agriculture spray, adjunct, soil fertilizer, spraying glyphosate herbicide. It's a flame retardant and is used in CDC-approved vaccines. Beta-propiolactone, known to cause cancer, suspected in gastrointestinal, liver, respiratory, skin, and sense organ poison. Genetically modified yeast, animal bacteria, viral DNA can be incorporated into the recipient's DNA and cause unknown genetic mutations. Latex rubber can cause life-threatening allergic reactions, also in vaccines. Monosodium glutamate, MSG, being studied for mutagenic, teratogenic, and reproductive effects. A neurotoxin. Allergic reactions can range from mild to severe. Aluminum, an additive in vaccines to promote antibody response. Implicated as a cause of brain damage, suspected factor in Alzheimer's, dementia, comas. Allergic reactions can occur on skin. Formaldehyde, a major constituent of embalming fluid, poisonous if ingested. Probable carcinogen, gastrointestinal, liver, immune system, nerve, reproductive system, respiratory poisoning. Microorganisms, live and killed, are also in vaccines. Polysorbate 80 and 20, known to cause cancer in animals. Anaphylactic shock, linked to numerous autoimmune issues. Ethylene glycol, which is antifreeze, also in vaccines. Benzazonium chloride, tributyl phosphate, suspected kidney and nerve poison. Glutathione, I don't think I said that one right. Glutathione, poison if is ingested. Gelatin produced from selected pieces of calves and cattle skin. Gentamicin sulfate, methylparaben, mercury. Mercury. Thermosil is in vaccinations. One of the most poisonous substances known to man, has an affinity for brain, gut, liver, bone marrow, and kidneys. Minute amounts, tiny amounts of thimerosal can cause serious damage, yet they are allowed in our vaccines. And I can tell you, I had a lot of people, anybody that I've had a conversation with recently about mercury, many people have said they don't put them in our vaccines anymore. They don't put them in our vaccines anymore, but they do. And I think you always have to ask, if you make the informed decision for your body and for yourself to get a flu vaccine or a tetanus vaccine, you need to be asking what's in them. It's the way we're going to educate ourselves and the way we're going to take back our health. And if you think about mercury, let's just talk about mercury for a minute. Do you remember when we were kids and they would put mercury in the thermometers? If one of those thermometers broke at school, what happened? Hazmat suits, the school would be cleared out. We wouldn't be allowed to be anywhere near that mercury. Don't play with mercury. It was a huge campaign, yet it's in our vaccines and it's being put into our bodies. Heavy metals as a whole, when we talk about heavy metal toxicity, the things we bake with, our baking ware. That's one thing, that's one of my goals actually this year, is to swap out all of my baking ware for non-toxic, because every time I cook with that, it's going into my body. We're going to talk about this later, but for those of us that were children and had mercury fillings, we call them amalgam fillings, leaching mercury into our bodies. So again, the information you're receiving today can be a little alarming, but we're going to talk about the hope of that as well. So moving right along, make sure you're putting your questions in the box and we'll look at them in a moment. So truth is never afraid of being exposed. I also heard that at school, and I thought that was such a wonderful, not wonderful, powerful, a powerful quote, that when something is the truth, why do people try to, you think about all the things that the CDC or the FDA or the government or any entity out there that's in power has tried to hide from us. And if they're trying to hide it, we have to ask ourselves why, right? Our food source, any sort of FDA or CDC approved medicine, what are they trying to hide? We just have to ask ourselves those questions. So as a society, we must ask ourselves, has the repeated manipulation of the immune system with multiple vaccines in the first 3 years of life, a time when the interrelated brain and immune systems develop most rapidly outside the womb, been a cofactor in the epidemic of chronic disease and disability plaguing children? All of our children today. Are we trading acute illness for chronic illness? Are we trading acute illness for chronic illness? We'll talk about that in a minute. Vera Schneibner, PhD, in her book, Vaccinations 100 Years of Orthodox Research, shows that vaccines present medical assault on the immune system and give data that we are exchanging acute illness for chronic illness. Let's read a little bit about what Dr. Schneibner says. Dr. Scheibner. So everything I'm telling you today also has resources. If you guys want any of the information, the books, the articles, the research, you should question it. So Vera Schneibner, this is what she wrote a little bit in her book. Welcome to the chat, Kristen. Happy to have you here. So for those of you that are just joining us, we are all on mute and I am going over the presentation. Please type in your questions for later. Okay, so in her book, 100 Years of Orthodox Vaccination, 100 Years of Orthodox Research, this is what she says. So the documented truth is that the incidence of and mortality from an infectious disease declined by up to 90% before any vaccine was ever used in mass proportion. Vaccinations, by introducing viruses directly into the bloodstream, far from preventing disease. Oh, sorry, somebody else is joining us. I'll back up. Vaccinations, by introducing viruses directly into the bloodstream, far from preventing disease, actually push the disease into a chronic form, deeper into the body and into vital organs. The results of suppressing measles and other infectious diseases in this manner are cancer and cause autoimmune and chronic diseases. The widespread incidence of chronic ill health and endless streams of respiratory infections, usually resisting all treatment, occurring in small children, and the continuing high incidence of childhood leukemia and cancers are themselves the evidence that not all is healthy in the kingdom of vaccines. Again, question everything. The upsurge of allergies in children in the past 50 years is the result of repeated multiple injections of the foreign antigens that we see in vaccination. Asthma and other autoimmune diseases are other widespread side effects of vaccination. Again, this is from Dr. Scheibner's book. It's called 100 Years of Orthodox Research, shows that vaccines represent a medical assault on the immune system. Okay, so that's a lot of information already so far. I want to show you some graphics, and you guys will get a copy of this presentation after. The purpose of this slide is to show you how many vaccines are being pushed from 1962, there was 5, to 2016, it was increased to 72 required vaccinations of US children. From 5 to 72. So let's question that. Let's ask why. Recommended vaccine schedule of 1983. This shows you in 1983 what the recommendations were for DTaP at 2 months of age, 4 months of age, 6 months of age, MMR at 15 months. Again, DTaP at 18 months, 4 to 6 years, and then tetanus is TD. The purpose of these slides is just to simply show you where we started and how far we've come with, as we talk about environmental toxins and poisons, vaccines fall into that category. 2017 recommended immunizations for children from birth to 6 years. So 2017, just looking at that year specifically, at birth a child is given Hep B, keep in mind, it includes mercury, which we just talked about what's in vaccinations. So each of these vaccinations include mercury in small doses. And so what happens when we administer small doses of mercury over and over and over again? Ask questions. You have to start asking questions to protect your family. 1 and 2 months of age, they're given Hep B again, RV, DTaP, Hib, and then so on and so forth. You can see, and this is just in 2017. So if we were to look at the current vaccination recommendations, I believe it's over 75 are being recommended. 50 doses of 14 vaccines before age 6, 69 doses of 16 vaccines by age 18. Before you take the risk, find out what is in it. Based on the CDC's 2017 recommended childhood vaccine schedule. So you can see at birth, what they're getting at 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, 12 to 18 months, 2 to 6 years, and then 7 to 18 years. Okay, so for those of you that just joined us, it's been really cool actually to see so many of you jump on kind of midway as we're chatting. So for those of you that just joined us, you can go back and listen to the information that was just presented. We started out by just kind of going over the flow of today. There's going to be some information presented today that may be challenging or difficult for you to hear. And that's okay, because we're going to talk about the hope in that as well. So for everything we talk about where there's been an environmental toxin that we've ingested or taken in, or we've chosen to vaccinate ourselves or vaccinate our children, just know that there is always hope in the choices that we make in the future. So I encourage you, if you are just joining us, please go back and listen to the beginning of this presentation so that you're on the same page as us. And we will be jumping into some of the toxins that we address, specifically mercury. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper into that, where it comes from and why we should never let it anywhere near our bodies. Okay, so critical thinking. I love this slide. We should always be critical thinking. Key questions that parents can ask a pediatrician. So even if you're not a parent, these are questions that you can start to think about when you go to the doctor. Are the vaccinated healthier than the non-vaccinated? Do the benefits outweigh the risks? Are vaccinations effective? What about polio? Are vaccinations personalized? Do vaccines cause damage that may not surface for years? Do vaccines cause crib death? Did vaccines eliminate childhood diseases? What's in a vaccine? Are there benefits to having an acute disease? Okay, so I did hear somebody talking, and if you guys have a question that can't wait, absolutely feel free to come off of mute and ask your question, or please type your question in the chat box. Otherwise, we're going to hold all questions until after. So if you guys do have any questions, go ahead and type them in that chat box and I will take a look or save them for after. But please, please, please be writing down your questions so that we can get to them at the end. So when we go to the pediatrician or when we go to the doctor, you guys could take this slide and you could write it down if you do choose to get any vaccinations. I would encourage you to ask these questions. Number 5, are vaccines personalized? I want to answer this one for you because the answer is no. Vaccines are not personalized, and a 150-pound man and an infant get the same vaccine. Critical thinking, I want you to think about that for a second. A newborn baby or an infant or a child goes to the doctor and they receive the same vaccine as a 150 or a 200-pound man. It kind of doesn't make sense if you think about it that way, right? Like what the toxic load of what the body can handle. So I want you to think about those things. Do vaccines cause damage that may not surface for years? Yes, the answer is yes, because of what's in vaccines. We already talked about what's in vaccines at the very beginning of this presentation. And the one thing alone, mercury, will cause detrimental effects in the future, including myself. And I'm going to share my story later on in this presentation. Do vaccines cause crib death? Do they cause SIDS? There is research that shows that they do. And a lot of that is tied to inflammation of the brain from certain vaccinations. That's so hard for parents to hear. It's detrimental, it's terrible, but we need to know the facts. It's important to be empowered and know this information. Are there benefits to having an acute disease? Yes, but we can medicate for the body and try to purge. So it's better to have an acute disease than a chronic disease, right? And if we go to the history of vaccinations, when they were first invented was to rid or get rid of the acute illness. We were trying to put a small dose of the illness into the body so that the body could heal itself from that illness. But actually, acute illnesses are beneficial to us. If you think about a fever, that's a good example. A fever, we actually want a fever because a fever helps us fight off, right? That's the body's natural fighting response. And I think I'm flipping a lot of you on your head right now in your thinking, because I know my thinking was very flipped when I learned. Some other questions that are not on here, but I can provide these to you after. Can vaccines cause cancer? Can vaccines cause autism? Can autism be reversed? The answer is yes, just so you know. Do vaccines affect our genes? Do research and politicians have conflict of interest in vaccine policy decisions? Yes. Does good science support vaccination efficacy and safety? Can you legally avoid vaccination? So just know that when you go to the doctor, you can ask these questions, okay? So that was the point of this slide. I just want you guys to be informed. The history of vaccines, and also I just want to point out, we're not going to talk about vaccines the whole time. I'm just getting through this because it is an important thing to point out as we talk about environmental toxins. Vaccines are consistently one of the most profitable operations of the medical monopoly, and they create customers for life. They are protected with such vigor and lies to ignore logic and science demonstrating the truth. In his book, Murder by Injection, the story of the medical conspiracy against America, author Eustace Mullins writes, "My honest opinion is that vaccines are the cause of more disease and suffering than anything I could name. I believe that such diseases are cancer, and many other conditions are the direct result of vaccination. Yet, parents are compelled to submit their children to this procedure, while the medical profession not only receives pay for this service, but also makes splendid and prospective patients for life." Another physician, Dr. W.B. Clark, found that cancer was practically unknown until compulsory vaccination with cowpox vaccine was introduced. I had to deal with at least 200 cases of cancer, and I never saw a cause of cancer in an unvaccinated person. Dr. J.M. Peebles states in his book about vaccinations, "The vaccination practice pushed to the front of all occasions by medical professionals through political covenants made compulsory by the state has not only become the chief menace and the greatest danger to the health of the rising generations, but likewise the crowning outrage upon the personal liberties of the American citizen. Poisoning the crimson currents of the human system with brute extracted lymph under the strange infatuation that it would prevent smallpox was one of the darkest blots that disfigured the last century." One more slide, don't worry, we're getting through the history. In an article in Science in 1977, Jonas and Daryl Salk warn live virus vaccinations against influenza or polio may in each instance produce the disease intended to prevent. The live virus against measles and mumps may produce side effects such as encephalitis or brain damage. And we learned in school that encephalitis is linked to SIDS. So when you hear about sudden infant death, it's because encephalitis is happening in the brain, and the baby's brain is swelling, which causes SIDS. And there are research papers on this. Again, I want you to get curious and ask questions. So whatever I am telling you today, don't take it as your truth unless you really do your research and find the truth for yourself. And there is a lot of resources out there showing vaccinations being linked to things like autism and SIDS and cancer. and the things we're talking about today. So most of the dangers of vaccinations are hidden and the information is buried or made difficult to find. We are shamed for wanting to space out vaccines. We are shamed for saying no entirely, and we are shamed for asking questions. We should never be shamed for asking questions. You should be able to walk into the doctor and say, I have a list of questions. The doctor is there to serve you, not the other way around. That is why we must seek the truth and do our own research. Okay, so I am going to, before I play this video, I am going to invite anybody that would like to come off of mute and ask questions on anything that I've said so far about toxins, vaccines. At the beginning, we talked a little bit about some herbs that help with emotional and physical remedies. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to play a video and I'm going to play only 15 minutes of this video. And this video is an hour and a half long. Okay, I saw a question come through. How can autism be reversed and can it be reversed in a young adult? What a wonderful, wonderful question. I'm going to parking lot that question so we can talk about it after the video, okay? So thank you for asking that question and we will parking lot it. All right, so I'm going to play the video and I want to make sure you guys can hear it. So everybody make sure your volume is up. And thumbs up if you can hear it when it plays, please.
Could have imagined. No sound.
Listen.
This is where I would be in life.
There's sound.
All seems like one giant blur to me. How everything happened, how I got here. After and everything I have felt, I wish more than anything that I could go back in time and stop this tragedy from the day it started. It was on September 13th, 1931, that Virginia S. was born. Hoover was in office, and we were still trying to recover from the Great Depression. It wouldn't be until 12 years later, in 1943, that she would become the oldest of the first 11 children ever diagnosed with autism. The world had no idea what was about to come.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Where were all of the children with autism throughout this time? Years kept passing by as if they were in fast forward. But it was almost as if the condition autism was in a deep sleep and couldn't be awakened. History would give us many opportunities to learn from our mistakes, if only our eyes had been open. But time wasn't waiting for us to learn any lessons. In 1988, the movie Rain Man would be the first to finally introduce the general public to the word autism.
What, he's crazy? No. Is he retarded? Not exactly. He's not crazy, he's not retarded, but he's here. Well, he's an autistic savant. I don't know what that means. You know, some people like him used to be called idiot savants. They have certain deficiencies, certain abilities. He's retarded. Autistic.
People were hearing the word autism for the first time. and struggling to understand what it meant. Even though a child psychologist by the name of Leo Connor had discovered autism almost 5 decades earlier, it would remain so rare through this entire period that it was simply never talked about. But that was about to change very quickly, when thousands of families' lives were soon to be turned upside down.
To end our week of autism coverage, we're going to tell you about one group of very young children being classified on the autism spectrum at what some say is an alarming rate.
By the end of this newscast, one more person will be diagnosed with autism.
The numbers are going up so quickly, something has to be done.
The numbers are staggering, and there's so much fear about autism. There's so much misinformation about autism. The autism epidemic is on the brink of entering a brand new chapter.
These numbers represent staggering 57% increase.
That is more new pediatric cases in AIDS, diabetes, and cancer combined. For pediatric cases. We need this entire globe to come in and find the cure because this is a global epidemic.
New numbers from the CDC showing 1 child in 68 has autism. That means about 1 million children in the United States are now diagnosed with autism.
How could this have possibly happened?
He was definitely spinning anything and everything. You know, you give him a sippy cup to drink from, he'd turn it on its side and spin it. You gave him a plate, he would spin it. I mean, anything.
Go up to an office chair and just spin it. He was really hypersensitive to sounds. Like he'd get in the car and the radio would be on and say his name, and he doesn't look up, he doesn't acknowledge it, and it's like, what, you know, why are you ignoring me? What?
Where'd he
Hello?
go?
No recognition of his peers, no interest in his peers.
His receptive language was completely gone. He didn't point at anything. He didn't try to get my attention to share things with me. I mean, he was just checked out. Picked up a book on autism and I read about a paragraph and I knew that's what we were dealing with. And I was like, wow.
Forget college. It's, you know, it'll be a miracle if he ever speaks.
I really sincerely believe that the vaccines were a part of his becoming ill and the autism.
Is there a link between childhood vaccines and autism?
Study of
The
1,000
CDC
kids
says
that did
no.
not show a link.
Autism-like symptoms after receiving 5 vaccinations in one day.
The reason that the doctors in this country are frustrated because, listen, all you're doing is you're antagonizing a
For over a decade now, many doctors and scientists, and even parents, have been in a raging debate about whether or not childhood vaccines are causing autism. It all began in 1998, when Dr. Andrew Wakefield published a paper merely hinting at a link between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism. He would end up learning the hard way, never to question the vaccine program.
Breaking news tonight, just hours ago, the British medical journal BMJ did something extremely rare for a scientific journal. It accused a researcher, Andrew Wakefield, of outright fraud.
Others have come along claiming it's specific ingredients in the vaccines that are causing autism. And even others are now claiming it's just too many vaccines given too soon.
Vaccines, I would argue, are the safest, best tested things that we put into our body. Obviously, nothing is absolutely safe.
It's got to be the vaccines. It's the only thing, you know, that went up in all 50 states at the same time.
I don't think it's any longer possible to say there was no evidence of any association between vaccines and autism.
Many studies have now been done that have showed there is absolutely no relationship between any vaccinations and autism.
It's unquestionably environmental. The science points to vaccines.
We've proven it's not the vaccines. It's really time to look elsewhere for the causes of autism.
Controversial subject, Nancy.
Not controversial
Well,
subject.
but controversial for parents who still
It is
believe.
not controversial, Matt. It's time for kids to get
If
their
it weren't
vaccine.
controversial, you wouldn't be ambushed.
No, it's not controversial. I mean, I really mean that. The science is the science.
Vaccines are used in the fight against infectious diseases. And many are concerned that without them, we would risk the return of diseases such as polio and smallpox. But there's one theory in the vaccine autism debate that is not questioning the vaccines themselves. It questions the mercury-based preservative, Thimerosal.
Thimerosal, it's an antiseptic preservative, and hasn't that been linked in some cases to autism?
Thimerosal was invented by the pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly in the 1920s.
Thimerosal doesn't make the vaccine more effective. It's just simply a preservative.
It is only added to vaccines, so pharmaceutical companies can be lazy and unsterile during their manufacturing and have a very cheap option to give vaccines shelf life.
And having an adequate supply of vaccine is very important.
Okay, well, let me follow up on that then. Single shot vials, does that need Thimerosal?
No, they don't, but
Well, then why don't we have single shot
there are a
vials?
lot of manufacturing issues associated with switching over. You need much more filling capacity for the lines.
You know, all the benefit of vaccine without using mercury. Mercury has always been an option.
And even though other options are available, the incredible risk of using thimerosal is taken solely because it's the cheapest. So this theory has nothing to do with the greater good. It has everything to do with the greater greed.
In 3 separate cases, a special federal court ruled that thimerosal, a vaccine preservative containing mercury, does not cause autism.
Thimerosal was found to be in vaccines at levels far above all mercury exposure guidelines. And 3 of the test cases in what was called the omnibus autism proceeding would represent thousands of parents from the stance that thimerosal had caused their children's autism.
For families to be compensated, all they had to prove was that it is possible thimerosal was to blame, and still that argument fell short.
The judgment read loud and clear. Thimerosal does not cause autism, except for when it does.
The government conceded liability in the case of Hannah Poling, who's now kind of the poster child for the movement.
Question is, did childhood vaccines cause a 9-year-old girl from Georgia her autism symptoms? Did they cause it?
Over 2 years before the omnibus judgment was made, this same court system had already quietly awarded and replaced Hannah Poling as a potential thimerosal test case.
One of the most disturbing things about this case is that the government did in fact settle, but now the case has been sealed.
I think the reason they conceded Hannah Poling was so that the records would be sealed and no one would be the wiser.
Back in 1999, 8 years before the Hannah Poling case, the Centers for Disease Control had run their initial analysis of thimerosal and found a major association with autism. Transcripts from a secret meeting in 2000 to address these findings were very clear regarding one of their concerns. Then, just over a year later, as we all witnessed a national tragedy, others saw this as an opportunity.
There are a lot of tough decisions that will be made as we develop and discuss and debate how to move forward.
In November of 2002, Congress passed the Homeland Security Bill, which created the Homeland Security Department. And the whole country woke up the next morning and it was reported that late at night, right before the bill was passed, somebody had slipped in a secret writer that would have dismissed all lawsuits against Eli Lilly and other vaccine companies for having put this mercury-based preservative in vaccines.
The exact day the Homeland Security Act was signed, the White House had the Justice Department file a motion to seal all documents related to hundreds of claims that thimerosal and vaccines had caused autism.
It was the most ridiculous motion ever filed in federal court. And under pressure, the Bush administration quickly withdrew that.
These deceptive acts were raising red flags everywhere. But there is so much more to the thimerosal story.
They made a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of documents they don't want you to see.
A story that spans over 8 decades.
Why did you start researching autism?
I got a tetanus shot on my 29th birthday, which is back in 2004. I got extremely sick, and I just wanted to forget it and just put it behind me and move on. And then the more I started watching news, you know, I would see all over the place where they were linking the word thimerosal with autism. Like, why are they connecting this word thimerosal, which I knew I just got devastated by, with this condition, this childhood condition, autism. So at that time, I realized, okay, it's time to start looking into the word autism.
He basically just like woke up like a different person. Like he went out one night with his friends and sorry.
On February 29th, 2004, I woke up in a whole new world. The very first thing I remember was going to the bathroom and everything sounding so loud. I went back to bed thinking I could just sleep it off. But there was so much noise inside my head that I was not able to sleep at all that day or that night. And by the next morning, I knew something was very wrong. I had no idea what was about to come.
What were you thinking was going to be the end result of all this? Going on tour, getting people together to help you make this?
For people to finally understand what autism is and how it got started and how it became an epidemic and what's caused it, public needs to understand what's happened here because the public will drive the change.
The first thing to note about thimerosal was it was patented by Eli Lilly scientists in 1927. So Eli Lilly did an experiment on humans. There was an epidemic of meningitis in Indianapolis. Eli Lilly's in Indianapolis, Indiana. 144 people came down with bacterial meningitis infections of the brain. And what Eli Lilly did is took a subgroup of those people and they exposed them to thimerosal. Extremely high doses. It was a 1% solution. So they were giving doses to humans of thimerosal that were killing animals in the laboratory. They gave it to them intravenously. And of the 22 people, all of them died. Based on experience of giving these doses of thimerosal to these 22 persons, they said that thimerosal or merthiolate, they're the same thing, had a very low order of toxicity for man.
That is the only safety study ever done on thimerosal, is that he told them that it was safe when he gave it to 22 people, all of whom died, most of whom died within a day.
We were wondering if there's somebody we could talk to regarding the history behind like thimerosal and the whole controversy behind it. Is there somebody we could talk to about that?
What now?
Pittman Moore bought thimerosal.
Okay, so I told you guys we were gonna watch 15 minutes of this movie. I'm gonna check in and make sure you guys are all okay. It's a doozy, it's a doozy. So the movie is called Trace Amounts, Autism, Mercury, and the Hidden Truths. And we just watched 15 minutes. It's an hour and a half long. I think it's really well done. I don't know if you guys would agree. I think it paints a picture of, you know, the other side of what we don't often hear. And I encourage you to go watch the rest of it. The gentleman that we were just learning about that woke up and his wife said that he wasn't the same person after he got the tetanus shot, he ends up telling his story throughout the rest of the documentary about how the mercury toxicity from the tetanus shot was actually what put him over the edge. And with the noises and the suicidal thoughts and things that were happening. And he had to do his own research to realize he needed to do a heavy metal detox to get the toxicity out of his body. And so the short answer to the long is, how do you reverse autism? The short answer to the long of, how do you reverse toxicity of aluminum and mercury and the heavy metals that have been imposed into our body and the systems of our body? It's not an easy answer per se, but the short answer to that is to chelate, to get the heavy metals out of the body through detoxing. And I have been on this journey for 2 years to get the heavy metals out of my body. And I'm going to talk about this book also momentarily, which I know some of you on here have read. And then I'm also going to show you my hair analysis that I just received back in April that shows what heavy metals are still in my body, even after 2 years of cleansing, and how pervasive heavy metals can be. Again, circling back, the name of this conversation and the purpose of this discussion is to talk openly about environmental toxins and things affecting our whole family, and the hope in that, and how we can use things like homeopathic medicine, which we'll talk about, and how we can use things like plants to detox and become healthier in mind, body, spirit, soul. Before we move on, does anybody have any thoughts or questions that are burning right now after watching 15 minutes of that video?
I just have a thought, Allie.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Like when you had like the list of like questions to ask your pediatrician about vaccines, obviously vaccines themselves are very controversial. And if a lot of doctors in the Western medical world are very pro-vaccine, is there somewhere else that you could potentially ask questions to get truthful answers? Does that make sense? You know, like, are vaccines effective? Are, you know, like all of these questions where like, you know, the truth to the answer, and they're just going to give you the answer that they want you to hear.
So I think that's a great question. So Rochelle, I think the point of showing up to a doctor's appointment and a pediatrician appointment with a list of 10 to 20 questions is you're almost proving to yourself that you know the answers to these questions and you've done the research. And when the doctor doesn't know how to respond, or the doctor gives you a response that is opposite of what you have researched and learned to be true, it's almost additional proof that you need that you shouldn't move forward on that course of action, or you shouldn't move forward on that medical advice. Because just because we go to the doctor or because we go to any sort of medical intervention, you know, you hear about people, I want a second opinion, I want a third opinion. We should always be our own advocate. We should always be asking these questions. And so you bring up a great question of, is there somewhere I can go where I'm going to get the answer that I actually want to get? I think it's actually more, you do your research, you set your questions, you instinctively know the answer to these questions. Can vaccinations cause cancer? If you do your research and you think it through, you're probably going to come up with the answer of yes, they could. Yes, they can. And then you go to the doctor and the doctor says, there's no way that vaccination can cause cancer. Or there's no way that vaccination can cause parvo in your pet. There's no way that vaccination can cause distemper in your pet. But you've done your research and you believe that it can because you've seen the research on the other side of it. It's so controversial and it's such a touchy thing to talk about. I think the overarching thing we need to really think about is to do our own research. I mean, we really need to start being our own advocate. So did that answer it at all or not really?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much of a question as a thought.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I do quite a bit of research. Most times I go to the doctors and they try to convince me otherwise. And I was like, no, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of people who will do research and then still go to the doctor. I have a friend that's like this, and she'll do all the things and then she'll go to the doctor and they're like, we want you to take this antibiotic, and she'll do all that, you know, it's a whole nother conversation. But you know, and she's still very much like, even though she does research and she's been told all these other things, will still go by the advice of her doctor, because people are still very much under the belief that their doctor is always right and they've done all this training and they know all of the things. So that's where it's like, where I stand my ground, and I have for a very long time, but a lot of people are still very much iffy. Even when they've done their research, it's still, you're up against somebody who's gone to medical school for so long, and sometimes it can be what's the word I'm looking for? Intimidating.
Or polarizing. Yeah. And I think what you're saying is she folds. She says, okay, I've done my research, but okay, I trust this person and I don't want to question their knowledge or their degree or their background. And ultimately she has to make that decision for herself, for sure. And if she does, let's say she makes that decision and she later, you know, has you know, symptoms that show up. The good news is from a homeopathic standpoint, from a natural medicine standpoint, we can start to undo some of the damage of that. Like you guys all know, every single one of you on this Zoom, I would venture to guess, knows if you take antibiotics, there's enough research and information out there now to show you need to be taking probiotics and prebiotics also, because it wrecks your gut. right? Not every doctor is going to tell you that. Hopefully now we're at the point where a doctor would tell you that. But it's talked about enough where we're starting to learn like, okay, probiotics and prebiotics are essential to take every day to build that gut army. And so that when we do have to take antibiotics, and we're grateful for Western medicine, we're grateful for these interventions when we need them on an emergency basis. We have enough of a gut army built up. We have enough of an immune system built up. We've done our due diligence. We've done our cleansing. We're eating healthy. We're avoiding these toxins. We're chelating and getting the heavy metals out. So when Western medical intervention does happen, our body is ready for it, you know? So yeah, great. It's make a great point. Any other thoughts on that? What Rochelle brought up or anything before we continue on? Okay, you guys are troopers. Thank you. I know this information is tough. Okay, so Trace Amounts, that is the name of the movie we just watched. So, my Mercury story, if you guys listen to Sunny Side Up with Allie Long is the name of my podcast. And I recently did an episode with Dr. Christopher Duray, and he wrote this book called Detox Memoir. And Detox Memoir is his story and his journey of over 7 years. His journey started with not being able to figure out why he was so chronically exhausted, not being able to figure out why he was passing out, walking to go get his garbage can at the end of his driveway. He had all these strange things happening to him. And ultimately, what he ended up finding out was that the mercury level in his body was so high and so toxic. And I believe he had like upwards of 15 amalgams in his mouth. So when you read this book, I highly recommend you all read this book. I can't say it enough. I've read it twice and I'm reading it a third time. Rochelle, who is on the call with us, Zoom today, was so inspired by this book. She did her own detoxing and her own cleansing. It'll rock your world and blow your mind when you see what can come out of your body when you do a gallbladder cleanse. That we don't need to have our gallbladders taken out, which is what so many people in the medical world will tell us. Your gallbladder is toxic, you need to have it taken out. When we know that there are natural things we can do to get stones out of our own gallbladder and detoxify our liver. If you think about the function of the liver in your body and the function of your gallbladder, bile emulsifies the fat in our body. And if it's not working in a flow and our system can't work together in conjunction and our gallbladder is all jammed up, for lack of a better word, with stones, we can't emulsify that fat. We can't fight off things with our immune system. All systems of the body work together. And so it's critical that we are paying attention to these cues of our body. Somebody once asked me, well, how did you know that you needed to do a liver cleanse? How did you know you needed to do a gallbladder detox? And it wasn't a I needed to know type situation. It was I have amalgam fillings in my mouth. I went to a biological dentist to have these amalgam fillings removed because I became keenly aware of how toxic mercury is in my body by reading this and doing my research. And I thought, you know what? I do need to do a cleanse like this to get the metals out of my body. I do need to do a cleanse like this to make sure that my immune system and my endocrine system are functioning efficiently. Think of your body as like a car, right? We go in for an oil change so that our car runs better. It's the same thing with the body. You need to have your channels of elimination open in order to assimilate nutrition, in order to assimilate minerals and vitamins. Everything needs to be working harmoniously in order for the other to complement and work efficiently. So this book talks a lot about that and a lot about toxins like mercury that weaken the liver toxicity cycle, what mercury does to the body, and even in trace amounts, just like that movie, that documentary we just watched, from whatever sources, mercury from a can of tuna, mercury from a vaccination, mercury from or heavy metals that are in our water. You know, it's all a part of the world that we live in, and we have to be hyper vigilant. If you want to read this book, read it. If you want to go to my Sunny Side Up podcast and listen to Dr. Dre shares his story. I share a little bit of my story in the podcast as well. And then we also did a book club. We did a detox memoir book club where we broke down the chapters. And Rochelle and I are actually going to be doing it again. That is how important this is when we talk about mercury and how it is a pervasive toxicity to the body. Okay, before I do that, before I move on to homeopathy, because those are the remedies, I want to talk about a little bit more about mercury. Fun fact, if you guys remember Alice in Wonderland and the Mad Hatter, and he had the Mad Hat, and there was mercury in beaver skins. I think that's kind of how the story goes. Our professor told us that Alice in Wonderland is actually based off of mercury toxicity and how people can go mad from mercury toxicity. And 18-month-old babies can't tell us that they're going mad, and adults can. So if you think about like autism or, you know, different things that happen in childhood, babies don't know how to tell us. They just cry, or they don't respond, or we see these different things happening to them. Okay, so this book here, oh my goodness, you guys, this book on vaccines, if anybody wants, it's so much information, but if anybody needs resources on questions to ask your doctor, what's in a vaccine, legal intervention, I mean, it's just filled to the brim. And I have a lot of articles here too, because everything we talk about today, I want to make sure you know their sourcing. Example of a suggested vaccine detoxification program. I can send this to anybody that wants it as well. But this gets into homeopathics. And so this is why I want to just kind of talk about this for a moment. And then the rest of the conversation is going to be about homeopathics. And it's the hope of all the toxins that we just talked about. So suggested detoxification program, flower remedies such as Star of Bethlehem or pine are really good for emotional support as you move through a detox. Aconite homeopathic is a really great remedy for the shock of toxins and vaccinations. Hypericum is really good for nerve damage. Ledum is really good for puncture wounds. Belladonna is really good for fevers, and it protects the brain. Silica is really good for nerves. Essential oils such as Valor, purification, frankincense, all really great for detoxing the body. Protecting the organs, Oregon grape, essential fatty acids, any sort of fatty acids, amazing for the brain. Lecithin, super good for the brain. Blue vervain, super good for the nerves. Vitamin C, slippery elm. If you want to raise your glutathione levels, vitamin B6 and B12 and folic acid, N-acetylcysteine. Would it be helpful for you guys? I know this isn't on a slide. Would it be helpful for you guys if I typed this up? Thumbs up. You guys want me to type this up? Okay, I'm going to type this up for you guys. I'll make a little note. Because these are great considerations, and I'll type it up as a document. That way you guys will have it as a document. We talked about making sure the channels of elimination are open with the sauna, lymphatic drainage, massage, all these things you can do on your kiddos too. So supporting the mitochondria, if any of you are taking notes, I'm just going to take a moment to write this down or to read this to you, and then we'll move on. Mitochondria support, eat clean whole foods, quality proteins, antioxidants, CoQ10, quality sleep, exercise, resveratrol, leucine, go-to cola, which is an herb, berberine, olive oil, niacinamide, and acetylcysteine again. Cold water therapy is really good. Detoxification support with spirulina, chlorella, enzymes, really good to detox the body. Nattokinase is really good for blood clotting. Additional powerhouse support, black cumin seed oil, selenium. And if you read this book, it will point out that mercury replaces selenium. So when you have mercury in your body, it's a fake out. It replaces selenium. So most of us that have a mercury toxicity are depleted in selenium. And so I want to show that to you actually. This is a great segue to show you. Go back. Let's see. I want to show you my heavy metal toxicity results. Okay. Thumbs up, you guys can see my screen, electrolyte minerals, nutrient minerals. Okay, so I got my results back. I sent in some hair to Equalife. Equalife is the name of the company that I used. And I will zoom in a little bit more so you can see this. So this is after I did my, I got my amalgams out in October of 2023. And then I did my hair analysis April of 2024. And you can see my iron was normal. My copper was really high. My manganese was high. See my selenium? Can you guys see right here? My selenium super low. So that would make sense to me, right? My selenium is probably really low because mercury has been taking its place. And so I have to do everything I can to increase that selenium. So it's kind of a great snapshot. If you are taking away information from this presentation and going, you know what, I really would like to do a heavy metal detox. I need to get the amalgams out of my mouth, or I can't get the amalgams out of my mouth because I can't afford it, but I still want to do a heavy metal detox. Thumbs up, you should, because we need to chelate. We need to get those heavy metals and those toxins out of the body. And then this gives you a breakdown. Your hair selenium is low, can be associated with stress and stress level of the thyroid. The soil does not always contain the needed selenium to obtain from our diet, and replenishing is necessary. So where do we get selenium from? Sources of selenium, organ meat, seafood, meat, poultry, eggs, milk, bananas, rice, oatmeal, brewer's yeast, wheat germ, enriched bread. Those are some Google, just some Google sources that I found of selenium. But you would want to check and see for yourself kind of where your own levels were. Okay, toxic metals, here we go. Can you guys see, can everyone see my mercury level? Can you see it? Okay, so this shows me, this is proof in the pudding that my mercury level is high. My lead is low, thank God. My cadmium, arsenic, and look at my aluminum. Holy shiitake mushrooms. Like this is one of the reasons right here, guys, why I need to cash out all of my pans and make sure that I'm just using the cast iron, because the cast iron doesn't leach that aluminum into the body. It's sneaky. These things are really sneaky and pervasive. Rochelle says my aluminum is high too. Yeah, Rochelle had her hair analysis done because she's on the same journey as I am, and it's just so eye-opening. Lower, additional minerals are low for me here. Okay, mineral ratios. This shows me my mineral ratios of calcium, magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, copper, calcium, and potassium. So just to read you a little bit of this, the test shows that calcium and magnesium ratio is elevated and can indicate a magnesium deficiency. This may coincide with stress, poor sleep, muscle aches, muscle twitches, sugar cravings. We next look at your calcium potassium ratio, which is elevated and may be associated with stress, poor sleep, weight gain, cold hands and feet, lack of sweating, fatigue, dry skin and hair, or constipation. Okay, so let me just say here, raise your hand in the chat if you have any sort of sleep issues, exhaustion, stress, decreased stamina, poor digestion, muscle aches, sugar cravings. We've all got something. We've all got something. And I think, you know, as we age too, we think about, well, this is just a normal part of aging. And I don't think we have to think of it that way. I think we really need to get to the root of what's going on in our body with our endocrine system, with our, with all the systems of our body. A zinc CU ratio is low and often coincides with weakened immunity, estrogen dominance, sleep difficulties, headaches, nervousness, lowered focus, allergies, and skin imbalances. So this is just informative. This is more information, right? The more information we acquire, the more informed decisions we can make for ourselves. And then this test or this report just goes on to show me, since the heavy metals are elevated and can be root cause imbalances leading to many symptoms, it's suggested you complete a heavy metal detox to help reduce and eliminate the toxins in the body. We recommend you do this and do retesting every 6 to 12 months. And then he gives, the test gives other things that I should be doing. So isn't that kind of cool? Kind of cool to see. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Has anyone else on the Zoom done a hair analysis test? Anyone else done a hair analysis? Okay. It's a neat way. I mean, we can give blood too, but blood is more invasive, right? Just sending in some of our hair to see. And again, I used Equalife, but there's other companies out there. Rochelle, you can absolutely not share, but did you have any eye-opening aha moments from doing your hair analysis that you would want to share?
Yeah, you know, my mercury and aluminum were also elevated. Those were the two. Everything else was low. Most of my minerals, except for sodium and there was one other one. Sodium was elevated, another one was elevated, and all of the other ones were low. That makes sense that selenium was low. Because I don't think he probably said it in the book, but about mercury, but that would make sense why it's low. The eye-opening thing for me, as I was reading through the symptoms that a lot of the what these being low or high were in, they were all very similar. And I was reading them out to Matthew today, and I was like, do you see a common trend? And he just started to laugh, but it was it makes so much sense. And I think the eye-opening thing for me is that, like you said, people are like, oh, they just attribute it to aging. And there's so many different causes, and people don't think that like what's potentially happening to you mentally is because of what's happening to you physically in your body. And I know that's becoming so much more of a correlation now, especially with gut health. It's the new trendy thing, which I think is great. But this even takes it on a deeper level. And yeah, I mean, I'm about to, obviously, as you know, about to start reading the detox memoir again, because now that I'm going through it even more, like I want to read and reabsorb the information, because I think it's just so incredibly powerful. But the one thing that was interesting for me is that my copper levels have probably been low for 6-7 years, maybe further than like later or earlier than that, excuse me, but I'm not entirely sure. But I knew they were low because my zinc levels have notoriously been low. But low copper, one of the symptoms is gray hair. And for those who know me well, like I proudly like wear my gray hair, if you will. I don't color my hair. But it's interesting that like potentially do I have more gray because my copper levels have been low, and it's just like it's not a good or bad thing. It's just like, oh, that's interesting. So as I go through this, all of these things, and you know, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I'm happy to have Allie by my side to help with, you know, keep things in a straight line. But it is really interesting to see how things change as I go through more of this detox.
Yeah, and I feel like Rochelle, you and I, and even some others on this call that I can think of, it's a journey and it's like an onion. So, you know, we are the onion, and you have to peel back one layer at a time of toxicity and trauma. And as you peel away the layers of the onion, sometimes we feel worse before we get better. But I want to remind you that the body heals from the inside out. So, for example, I have some psoriasis or eczema, not diagnosed by a doctor per se, but that's what I feel that it is. It's just an itchy patch on my arm. And I'm actually embracing it because I feel that my detoxing is coming out of my body, and I would rather have it out than in. So I want to encourage all of you that go on any kind of detox journey. First and foremost, don't do it without support. Because if you have a negative reaction, or you have what we call Hersheimer's reactions, Hersheimer's responses, and you feel worse before you get better, you'll give up because you're not being supported by a team or a doctor or a naturopath that can help you through that. So just know I'm here for that for you. And then Rochelle and I are going to be leading the next Detox Memoir book club. So we would love for you all to join us, get this book and join us, because the more we dive into it, this is literally everything we're talking about. Dad, Jim asked the question, can somebody with adult autism heal? Can somebody with adult autism cure their autism? Well, I don't think in every case that they can, but if the adult person with autism went on a journey of heavy metal detox and was able to go down the path of, again, peeling those layers of the onion off, there's a good chance, there's a good possibility that the autism would be lightened. There's a good possibility that the veil could be lifted. And I just want to say that with caution, because I know people listening to this or that are on this call, especially those that work in the realm of special needs or autism or even therapy or things of that nature, you know, they're more well versed on what to look for, or you know, what presents as autism. But what we're talking about right now is detoxing to see if those symptoms can be alleviated. So to answer that question, Dad, I think if somebody with autism did choose to do heavy metal detox and did choose to go down the path of seeing if they could get those heavy metals extracted from the body, I think we would see results. So, but not in every case. You know, I have a friend, a very close friend, whose daughter has never spoken a word in her life. And her daughter is 21 years old now. And, you know, I think to myself, I can only imagine she has tried everything. She has tried everything for her daughter, because that's what we do for our kids, right? We do everything we think of. But I do have that question in my mind, you know, have they tried a heavy metal detox? Have they gone down the path of chelating? Would it help her? You know, and when we talk about natural medicine, it's never, natural medicine is never detrimental to the body. And so it can't hurt when we try these things. And so when we talk about homeopathy, homeopathy tackles the cause of ill health rather than suppressing the symptoms. It treats the person, not the disease. Remedies are selected on the basis of all aspects of the patient and his or her symptoms. We look at symptoms, and each treatment, like each person, is unique. And that's the beauty of homeopathy. So this kit that I keep holding up, if you guys have ever seen Highland cell salts or Boiron, like little sugar tablets, I ordered this kit for my family, and I did just order it on Amazon, but you can go directly to helios.co.uk. Look up Helios, Helios. or you can order it on Amazon. And there's a plethora. If you type in homeopathy kit, there's a plethora of things. So in my homeopathy kit here, there are things like, which we'll talk about what all of these mean. Like if you're not feeling well and you have flu-like symptoms, this is called bryonia, and bryonia is good for flu-like symptoms. Again, you look at the symptoms and then we address the root of what's happening in the body. And you just put 2 pellets or 1 pellet under your tongue. And depending on how severe your symptoms are or what you're experiencing I could recommend different homeopathics for you. One that's really good, Nux vomica. Nux vomica is really good if you have like hangover symptoms or flu-like symptoms. Nux vomica is a really good one. Arnica. You guys have probably all heard of arnica. Arnica is all natural pain relief from a plant. So there's all these different homeopathics in here that are accessible for my family. If you ever get poison ivy, Rhus tox is a really good one for poison ivy, all natural. And the way that homeopathy works is like cures like. And so I'm going to take you to this slide. Circling right here, homeopathy is a natural system of healing that works with your body to restore itself and improve your overall health. It is non-toxic and can be used with very small children and pets. It's affordable, easy to purchase at local stores and online. It's federally recognized as a form of medicine regulated by the FDA, which can be good and bad. Homeopathy has been clinically effective for acute and chronic conditions for 200 years. There are thousands of clinical studies with positive outcomes. So just know that. 5 interesting facts about homeopathy. It was founded by physician Samuel Hahnemann in the 1790s. The Greek word homeopathy comes from 2 Greek words, homeosis, meaning similar, and pathos, meaning suffering. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a minute. Homeopathy comes from 2 Greek words, homeos and pathos, meaning similar, suffering, like cures like. So you have poison ivy, you take a remedy that mimics poison ivy, that is poison ivy. So we go to our Materia Medica, which is my homeopathic Bible, and we would look up your symptoms. And if I go to Rhus tox, I thought this would be fun to go to one with you guys. Rhus tox. So I'm going to go to the page in my Materia Medica. Now, please know, I'm not expecting any of you guys to go buy a Materia Medica and start diving into homeopathy unless you want to, which would be really cool. Call me and I will help you. You'll say, hey, Allie, my symptoms are a snotty nose, itchy skin, my eyes are burning, it's worse at night, I'm super thirsty. You start to tell me all of your symptoms. And what we do, guys, is we write them down. I'm going to go back to Rhus tox, but if you gave me all of your symptoms, what I would do is I would write down all of your symptoms in what we call a rubric. And this is what a rubric looks like. Okay, so we would write down your symptoms and then I would grade them. I would rate them on which homeopathic remedy matched. And then I would get back to you and say, okay, based on your symptoms, bryonia would be recommended for you. So it's really cool. It's a cool way to use natural medicine to heal the body. So we're going to go to Rhus tox. All right, can you guys see? It says Rhus tox poison ivy. Okay, I know it's hard to see. Okay, so Rhus tox poison ivy. So what's going on with the body? The eyes are swollen and red. There's pustular inflammations. Maybe the ears are ringing and in pain. We're sneezing in the nose. Sore throat, potentially swollen glands. That obviously we have itchy skin. So we go through and we're like, okay, do these symptoms match your poison ivy? And you're like, yes, 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 yes. So we know we can start you on Rhus tox, and Rhus tox would help bring the poison ivy out of the body. And sometimes it can be worse before it gets better, just like I mentioned before. And so homeopathy, like cures like, you actually take poison ivy and you take the frequency of the plant and you put it into a tincture of sorts, and then it turns into this little sugar pill, and then you take it and the body recognizes it and says, oh, okay, I know how to fight this off now. I know how to get rid of this because like cures like. That's kind of like an elementary way of explaining it. There's a question in the chat. Unless it has to do with eye drops. I don't know what that means. Something with a homeopathy. You mean you need eye drops and eye drops are helpful?
No, the FDA no longer, any company that made like homeopathic eye drops, no, they no longer, for some reason, they're no longer able to do that. They're no longer able to sell them.
Got it.
Yeah. That was
Okay.
that you said when it was more towards when the FDA, you said FDA approves it, and I was like, unless it's eye drops. Ear drops you can get, eye drops you cannot anymore.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. Thank you. Okay, the second principle of homeopathy is the more diluted a remedy, the greater its potency, which is a little confusing to people. High profile homeopathy patients include multiple generation. Oh, no, I don't even know. That was just on there from something I found. But okay, I wanted to show this to you. How remedies are made. So they call this potentizing. And you can see the natural substance is the plant. So let's pretend this plant is poison ivy, rhus tox. They put the plant in the mother tincture. Each vial, no, I won't read that yet. They put that in the mother tincture, which is filtered water. So you always want to make sure that it's filtered water. And then they would take 1 drop of the mother tincture and put it into 99 drops of pure alcohol, just 1 drop. And then 99 drops of pure alcohol, you would do another drop to make it even more potent. And then another drop, or no, less potent, because it's more potent the more diluted it is. Yeah, more potent the more diluted it is. So as we go down, you can see as we add more, it becomes more potent. Anyways, the whole point of me showing you this slide is I kind of wanted you to see how a homeopathic is made. And then they take these drops, and you can actually just take these drops under the tongue. Like if you were to make this at home, you could take these drops under the tongue. But in natural medicine and homeopathy, they turn them into these sugar pills, or the sometimes you see the Highland in the Highland tubes. I didn't bring them with me where I'm at today, but they're like dissolvables almost. They kind of dissolve right under the tongue. So I wanted you to kind of see how those are made. And then I wanted to show you this. Wait, let me go back. Okay. Wanted to show you this book. This is a really great book for you guys to have. Oh, good. We got 15 minutes for questions. Homeopathic Medicine at Home, Natural Remedies for Everyday Ailments and Minor Injuries. So when we talk about, so we kind of came full circle. We talked about environmental toxins and all the things in the world that are toxic to our body. And then we talked about ways we can undo those toxins, right? So homeopathy is a part of undoing those toxins. When we talk about chelators and things that get the toxins out of the body, chlorophyll, cilantro, charcoal, which you can get charcoal in homeopathic form too. Anything we're going through, menopause, PMS, trauma, heavy metal toxicity, just anything you can think of that we're going through, we can start to look at the symptoms and repertorize it and figure out what natural medicine would be good for you. And that's where this book comes in. So again, you can call me and I can be your naturopath, your natural health educator, your naturopath insight. Or you can start to do your research on your own, which I really, really encourage you to do. Let's look at, in this book, like, let's say, I just want to give you one example before we open it up. Aconite for colds. That's the page I turned to. So let's say, in this book at home, you have a cold, and first stages of a common cold: frequent sneezing, dripping clear fluid from the nose, burning throat, throbbing congestive headache, roaring in the ears. You've got all these symptoms. What do we normally do when we have these symptoms? Go to the doctor. And the doctor says, just go home and rest. Or if you have, if it's really bad, maybe they'll put you on an antibiotic. It's like, we don't really, if you really stop to think of it, if you really look at all the symptoms, homeopathy helps match those symptoms with what's going on, and it can offer you relief right away for like $7 a tube. Really, really affordable. With aconite, the symptoms would be onset after exposure to cold, dry wind, restless at night, you'd be thirsty, you'd have a fever. One cheek would be red and the other would be pale. So if you ever saw somebody with like one red cheek and one pale cheek, that would be a sign that they needed aconite. And I just don't think this is common knowledge. I don't think we talk about this, and that's why this conversation is so important, so we can start to talk about things like that. Let me turn to one more page. Let's see. Women's problems. Okay, let's go to women's problems, and then I'll let you guys call one out too if you want me to look one up. Let's go to what about, okay, here's an interesting one. Coffea for insomnia. What does coffea sound like? Coffee for insomnia. Like cures like. Coffea for mental activity, excitement, sleeping until 3 a.m., then only dozing, nervous agitation, excessive emotions, worse from noise. So coffea, if you have insomnia, you can actually take coffee in the plant form to cure insomnia. Isn't that crazy? Pretty cool. Okay, so that is like just kind of the down and dirty of homeopathics and what homeopathics are. I want to open it up for questions now. And the questions can be questions about anything you heard today. What is just like really sitting on your heart? What maybe something new you learned that you want to know more about? Or if somebody wants to call out a symptom that they're having, we could try and look up a homeopathic remedy. Today's presentation was 4 to 6, and we've got about 15 minutes left. So let's do it. What questions do you guys have?
Hey, Allie, really quick, only because it totally blew my mind when you sent me this, and I think it very much connects homeopathy and talking about vaccines and everything. The article specifically, like if people choose not to vaccinate their kids, their babies, how you can use homeopathy instead. And you sent me that, and I think it's just it was so brilliant and very much obviously connects with what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So the information, did I send you, was it on nosodes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember which one it was that I sent to you?
No, but I could probably look it up real quick.
Okay. Well, if you find it quickly, if you don't, that's okay. So what Rochelle is talking about, yeah, this might be it right here. Okay, here, I'm just going to read this to you. Rochelle, keep looking. If you find it, pull it up for us. But there's remedies called nosodes. Nosodes emit the same frequency as the original disease agent. This frequency acts to stimulate the general immune system function. Taking a dose is like taking a tiny dose of the disease itself. Because the nosode is energetic, there's no actual disease present. However, when introduced to the body behaves as if the disease is for a moment. This process is sufficient to educate the immune system about that particular disease. This is a similar principle that vaccines were historically based upon, but nosodes are made without additives, adjuvants, chemicals and things like mercury or preservatives. So if a mama decides not to vaccinate her baby, you could do nosodes. You could do no vaccinations if you chose to, if that was your choice, or you could do nosodes. And the nosodes would be the energy of the vaccination. So the energy of Tdap or the energy of MMR. And the body recognizes that to create an immune response to it because it's the frequency of the medicine. So that might not have been exactly what I sent to Rochelle, but it's similar and it's the same with pets. So if your pet is showing signs of distemper or parvo, you can give your pet a nosode of distemper or parvo, and it will help them fight it off, and it has no detrimental benefits to it. I found a company online that makes pet nosodes because I needed a couple nosodes at my house. And if anybody has questions about the name of that company, I can send it to you. Any findings, Miss Beasley?
No, but I don't, you know, sometimes when someone sends a picture, you have to like re-download it so it doesn't come up in the pictures, but that was pretty much it.
Pretty much it. Okay, great. No, I'm glad you brought that up. Which option is best for my child, vaccines or homeopathic immunization? I have so much information, you guys. Just please reach out with specific needs. Like if you're on the fence about vaccinating your kid, and you want alternatives, reach out. I'm here for you. Okay. It says protocol, pull up the vaccine schedule from the CDC, swap out a homeopath for each vaccine due. Do each homeopathic one at a time, then move on to the next. Vaccine damage protocol. If you did receive vaccinations and you want a protocol to undo the damage of vaccines, right here. I have a whole thing here. Silica, binders like humic fulvic acid, bentonite clay, apple pectin, heavy metal detox, heavy metal detox, heavy metal detox, eat good fats, repair the gut, immune support like astragalus, which is a plant, grand unified, which is selenium and boron, and put biblical essential oils on your feet like myrrh, frankincense. If you guys want a copy of this, you guys want me just to send this to you? I'll just send it to you. Okay. All right, what else you got? What symptoms? What questions? Was anything really hard to hear today? Were you guys like, that was tough? No?
No, I just wanted to say that I'm encouraged. I want to get started. I want to get tested and then go through the protocol based on what the results are. I think it's, you know, it's really worth taking a look at, diving into to see, especially for someone my age, what the accumulation is. And I'm just very curious now.
Amen, sister. I'm so happy to hear that. I think you should join, if you're open to it, join our book club. Join the Detox Memoir Book Club when Rochelle and I do it. And then I can help you too. I'll send you the link to order your heavy metal or your hair analysis. And then that'll be a really good jumping off point to take a look at, you know, what comes back in your hair analysis. And it could be something so simple too, like, gosh, I've been having this symptom forever and I had no idea that my copper was so high or that my selenium was so low. And it's like, wow, it's showing me, you know, it's just very empowering.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm on board with it. I'm here to help. So
I'd be interested in that link too, Alicia.
okay. You got it. My follow-up to you guys will be a link to the hair analysis, information on how you can join the book club and order the book. This vaccine damage protocol, The protocol we talked about this, it's like 4 pages long. So I'll just scan it in and send to you, the detox protocol. And that way you guys will just be all loaded up with, you know, whatever you need in your toolbox, right? Because we're creating this toolbox so we have everything when we need it.
Great.
Allie, do you have the link for the promo for the hair analysis?
I think so. That's the one I'll send.
Okay.
Do you have it?
I do have it. I can send it to you too, because the old one that you had originally sent me doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
They sent a new one. And so for anyone who's listening and anyone who's on here, it's the hair analysis is typically $200. And the link, you get the hair analysis for free. You just have to pay shipping and handling. And for those of you that are like, is this like real life? Is this a spam? It's essentially their way of getting you into their system to like buy other tests and do all the other things. But obviously Allie just showed you her hair analysis. I got mine back. So you legitimately get the information, but it's just their way of getting you into their funnel. You know, it's a marketing thing. So, but I can send you the new one, Allie. I just sent it to like a whole bunch of people.
You know what? Thank you. Please do. And what Rochelle said, that is exactly it. When they send you the report back, they send you an email and they recommend their supplements. But just know you don't have to purchase their supplements. It's just a way to get you into their funnel, just like Rochelle said, and just use the information. I mean, why not have a free kit and just pay shipping and have a place to start, you know? So I love that. It's just empowering, so empowering. Anybody else? Any symptoms or final questions before we wrap up?
I suppose that autoimmune disease has come up also as the body's response to, I don't know, internal inflammation related stuff, which is due to heavy metal toxicities or pesticides or other environmental causes in your body, right? Autoimmune diseases. And I think, aren't autoimmune type diseases another thing that's come on in the last 20, 30 years that didn't used to be there, you know, with maybe perhaps also
Yeah.
shots, things like that. So.
Oh my gosh, 100%. Dad, I'm so glad you brought that up because autoimmune diseases, it's self-fighting self, right? So Crohn's, let's name some other, IBS, is IBS autoimmune?
Very well, could be, yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart. I need some healthy fats for my brain. Anyways, any autoimmune disease is the body's response to something being out of balance. That literally, if you look at it that way, an autoimmune disease is the body's response to something being out of balance. So how do we get to the root of the imbalance? And once we get to the root of the imbalance, everything else will start to heal itself. You know, like a leaky gut, for example, too. I mean, if you have leaky gut, it's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect any sort of gut health you have. So yeah, I think you bring up such a great point, Dad, that autoimmune is getting to that root problem, and the heavy metal toxicity and the heavy metal detox would definitely help with that. If you had a human body.
I brought it up because probably 4 years ago, all of a sudden I had nasal polyps, asthma came on, and I went to a pulmonologist, and you know, and it was, oh, you've got early stage COPD, and you know, this sort of thing. Come to find out, because they didn't do any blood work, well, I've got the elevated particular type of white blood cell. It's double what it should be. Okay. And it was causing all these responses in my body. So that's what I related to. It's autoimmune type thing. So I need to try to detox and do some of these protocols.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad that you got to the bottom of that. And
And also eczema is autoimmune related, I believe.
oh yeah,
It's a response by the skin. Yeah. that's right.
for sure. I mean, I think that's an autoimmune response that I'm having for sure. And it's also stress related too. What was I going to say about that? Oh, write this down and I can send it to you guys too. But my favorite heavy metal detox is called HM Protect. HM, H as in horse, M as in Mary, HM Protect. And I did a 60-day, you don't have to change anything else about your eating or anything like that. You just take it. I did it for 60 days and I'm going to do it again, especially after I got my hair analysis and I still have a lot of work to do. But that's one of my favorite ones. And that's the one my biological dentist recommended too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We're at 6 o'clock, so I want to be sensitive to your time. I'm very, very grateful that you guys jumped on. For those of you that are joining us later, if you guys have any questions that come up after we hang up, please email me at bornsunnyside@gmail.com, bornsunnyside@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And I will send a follow-up email to all the things we talked about. If you'd like to join Rochelle and I on the next Detox Memoir book club, shoot me an email that says the word book club to bornsunnyside@gmail, just the word book club, and I'll know you want to join. And it'll probably be in August. I have to connect with Miss Beasley on that. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you learned a lot.
Thank you. So interesting. Thank you.
I'm so glad. All right, you guys have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.